Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. The team of professionals at the Tax Defense Group are passionate about helping taxpayers resolve their tax debt. Their services include basic tax preparation, tax audits, resolving large tax debt, and more. They actively represent taxpayers throughout the entire USA. If you need help resolving your tax issues, contact the Tax Defense Group. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Are you thinking about starting a business or a side hustle? For all businesses to be successful, you need a website. Writer Junkie offers website development, content writing, and SEO services for business websites. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. We recently launched our website, ucaststudios.com. With articles about sports, special interest topics, and more, we have some cool stuff on our site. To read our content, please visit ucaststudios.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Lakers Outsiders Weekly Podcast, brought to you by UCast Studios. I am your host, Gary Kester, here with you as always. I am joined today by Honi Ahmadian. Honi, I want to just congratulate you on your favorite team winning their NBA basketball game today. They beat your second favorite team, and your favorite player went off. So how does it feel?
Feels great. It's always a good day. First of all, I guess I should clarify that I'm not actually a Raptors fan, although I do enjoy their team. It's always a good day when you get to see Kyle Lowry and his backside put on a great show.
Honi is just being modest. He's the CEO and founder of Raptors Outsiders. That's why I have him on this pod today. We are recording this pod just briefly after the Lakers fall to the Raptors for the 972nd time in a row. And yeah, tough game for the Lakers. Tough game all around. I mean, Toronto's a good team. Like, we're going to dive into it. We mentioned this on the last pod. We went over the Clipper game in depth a couple days ago when it happened. So if you want that, you can just go over to basically wherever you get your podcasts and find Lakers Outsiders on there. It's on Podbean, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. We did a full pod on that one. We're going to go back to that one here to wrap up this podcast, but this is going to be kind of more about the Raptors game because that's the one that happened the night that we're recording this. So as always, guys, be sure to subscribe to Lakers Outsiders and UCast Studios on those podcast platforms, and you can subscribe to us on YouTube as well. We got a couple videos, video projects coming up on Lakers Outsiders here in the next few days, so stay tuned for that. We're going to be now that games are back, we're going to have some more video content, so I'm looking forward to that. And you can follow Honi and I on Twitter. Honi is just at HONIAHM, and I'm just at Gary Kester. So, all right, let's dive into this Raptors game. Obviously, like I said, a tough game for the Lakers, but I mean, the Raptors are good, man. Like, people have been kind of sleeping on this team, even though they're the defending champions, obviously because they lost Kawhi Leonard in the offseason. But people forget that this team is really good. And we mentioned this in the last pod at how well ran?
Well run seems right to me.
Yeah, I'm not an English major, but well-run organization the Raptors are. The front office has done a great job, and Nick Nurse is a hell of a coach, man. I mean, that team is extremely well coached. They're 47-18 this year. Like, they're not really that far off from the Lakers, which is kind of crazy. I mean, the Lakers are now 50-15, so that's 3 games better. So this team is really good, so I don't want people to overreact to this loss. But, Honi, I was very frustrated watching this game. How did you kind of handle this loss? Were you more frustrated, more like, it's okay, it is what it is at this point? I mean, since it was your favorite team they lost to.
It was a little bit of both for me. I wasn't truly frustrated because of the reasons that you said. The Raptors are really, really good, and I don't think there's really any shame in losing to them. and we kind of talked about this to wrap up the podcast the other night. They're just really, really well coached, and every single player on their team, in their rotation at least, is not a defensive liability. There's not a single player that they put out on the floor where you're like, all right, we can target that guy on offense. And I think you saw that tonight, that the Lakers really struggled to get into their offense. The Raptors from the get-go threw double teams at Anthony Davis literally every time he caught the ball.
Yeah.
And to his credit, I think AD did a much better job handling that than he has in the past. But it obviously did bother him. He didn't have a great scoring night. And they also managed to put a lot of different bodies on LeBron and keep him slowed down as well. At the end of the day, there's also the issue of the Lakers just not hitting three-pointers, and they got quite a few good looks. They took 40 of them, which is a lot compared to their usual numbers, and they only made 10. So if they have an average night shooting with those numbers, they probably come out on top. So because of that, I wasn't too upset. I was just more frustrating that it's kind of a trend that's continued over these last few games, that the Lakers haven't been able to shoot the ball from deep.
Yeah, my frustration, I mean, lies with the fact that Kyle Lowry, I feel like, never misses a shot against the Lakers. And I don't know, for me, he's a frustrating player to watch. I feel like I used to like Kyle Lowry, and now I just get frustrated every time I watch the Lakers because he's a really good player.
Yeah.
But man, that guy ends up on the floor a lot. Like Tony Parker, like ends up on the floor for like no reason. But no, also frustrated just for the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, the Lakers did have a number of open looks, which is good, but they still are going through these dry spells. That's very frustrating. And I think I tweeted this during the game. They actually had two different 5-minute periods in this game where they didn't register a single bucket. They had that once against the Clippers as well. They started the third quarter. First 5 minutes, I think they had a free throw, and that was it. And then they started two quarters like that. I think the first and the third quarter. So maybe it's the third quarter. That's a trend here. But starting quarters kind of slow. I hope it's not a trend that continues. But the start of the first and third quarter, I mean, they spotted a good team 13 points and still had a halftime lead. So, I mean, they started to battle back, but you got to give Toronto credit for adjusting in the second half and, I mean, just taking it to the Lakers. In the second half, it was, the game kind of totally flipped. And I think it was a tie game with like 7 minutes left. And then the Raptors just went on a big run from there. They really kind of took control of the game and executed a lot better. Lakers kind of settled for some shots. I mean, going into this game, I was a little optimistic because, I was like, yeah, the Lakers played 2 nights ago, but they should be still relatively, I mean, should still be fresh because they had a day off. And it was Toronto's for 4.5 months. And I was like, maybe they'll be rusty and, kind of like what we saw with the Lakers and the Clippers. But I think more so the Lakers and Clippers are just two really tough defensive teams, so the offenses were going to look pretty bad. And I mean, at times, both of the offenses in this game didn't look great either because they're both very good defensive teams. Yeah. And, and another thing too is Toronto. I mean, obviously, we have no insight to how long they've been prepping for the Lakers, but they look like a team that had been game planning for them for a month because they knew they were first on the schedule. Because it's one thing to just double Anthony Davis on every touch, which they were basically trying to do. It's another thing to execute it really well because you're basically saying, we're going to get the ball out of this guy's hands and then scramble at first playing 4-on-3 and trying to rotate and get everybody in the right spots. It takes a lot of practice, playoff like adjustment, like a playoff series like adjustment, and they played it, I mean, really, really well. I mean, Lakers did miss a lot of open shots, but for the most part, I mean, to employ that type of tactic and be as sound defensively as the Raptors still were, because I'm sure they've done that before to other guys, but that's something that takes a lot of repetition, a lot of practice, and it's not easy. It's not easy to double a guy and basically say we're going to make all the other guys play 4-on-3, especially when one of those four is LeBron James, in a lot of those instances. So. Frustrating night for Anthony Davis. I don't know. He didn't seem like fully engaged like he did, and maybe that's just because he wasn't able to get going. I don't know. I mean, do you think this is just a bad matchup for AD, or do you think it was just an off night, or how problematic do you think the like teams double teaming him into the playoffs? Like, how could that affect the Lakers down the stretch?
I don't think it's insignificant. I think if there's one flaw you can point to in AD's game, overall, it is his passing ability, especially when he is doubled. Being able to make those quick decisions, find cutters, find shooters, is not really his forte. And I think he did a better job of that tonight overall, especially in the first three quarters. But it is an issue, and I think there's a trend. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there is a trend overall this season, especially in games against these tougher teams, where in the fourth quarter, Anthony Davis doesn't really perform as much as the Lakers need him to. I think tonight he only had one three-pointer, was his only scoring in the fourth quarter against the Clippers. I think he only had 2 points in the fourth quarter after having a really good game overall. So I think this is an issue that the Lakers really need to address, and he needs to address. And I think it's a combo thing. It's a matter of him just really taking advantage of matchups and being aggressive to get to the rim and especially draw fouls, which he's really good at. And I think it's up to Vogel and LeBron as well to get him in those positions. I think I like that the Lakers were playing through him in the post a lot to get those double teams and have him pass it out and then create some advantageous opportunities. But I also think it took way too long to get him involved in like a pick and roll game where he could be catching the ball with that full steam going towards the rim. And again, it's both of the different parties because AD also had some moments where he would beat his man off the dribble, but instead of going strong at the rim, he would just stop and take a jumper, and that's not really what you want your big guy to do. Like he's a good shooter, but I don't really want him taking pull-up elbow jumpers instead of trying to get to the rim and draw an extra foul. So I think that to me, honestly, is probably one of the most important things for the Lakers to figure out between now and the playoffs.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, yeah, like you said, needs to improve and needs to get better. And I don't know if it does. I mean, it's just something they got to find a solution for. I mean, that's kind of one of those things that might need an off season of work with Anthony Davis, of a lot of film study and things like that. It makes me think, and not that I'm comparing the two players, but it makes me think back to Andrew Bynum. Bynum kind of had this, similar issues with that, where it was like teams couldn't double Pau Gasol because Pau was basically a point guard in a power forward or a center's body and could just pick you apart. But teams could double Bynum in the post, and he had kind of problems passing out of it. So AD kind of has some issues with that as well. And sometimes I think I wish he would just make the simple pass and allow basically the nearest pass to swing the ball, and sometimes makes kind of that extra pass when he doesn't need to. So it definitely does need to get better, and the Lakers need to kind of adjust their offense a little bit. And I like getting the ball to Anthony Davis in different positions, either on the move, spotting up for three, not primarily just in the post, which seemed to be kind of most of their game plan tonight. I mean, he did have some looks from three that he passed up, and the Lakers as a team were kind of overpassing tonight. It was a little frustrating. Passed up some good looks. Even J.R. Smith passed up a three to pass down to AD, I think. And even AD was like, "Why didn't you shoot that, dude?" Like, overpassing was kind of an issue. There were some possessions where the ball movement was great. Guys just didn't want to pull the trigger. So, but yeah. Got to get AD the ball, I think, a little bit more on the move. But ultimately, at the same time, if guys make open shots, we're probably having a very different discussion right now, and we're probably applauding him for being unselfish and not worrying about getting his. But at the same time, like Anthony Davis is maybe a top 5 player in the game right now. We got to get him more than shots.
And
just got to get him more.
Sorry, to his credit, he had 0 turnovers tonight while dealing with that sort of defense. Like he had a good day of handling the ball, and he had 3 assists as well. And like you said, I think today he did a much better job of making that easy pass out of the double teams and letting the other guys swing the ball around and get advantageous situations.
Yeah, and some of it just comes down, like I said, to guys making shots. Like Danny Green right now. I'm obviously a big Danny Green fan because he was a Tar Heel national champion and all that. And man, he's just struggling right now. He's struggling. And like I feel like there's this like weird mental complex with shooters when you finally get them on your team, Because like Danny Green is a good shooter. He's been a good shooter for the majority of his career. And then you get him on your team, and even if they're shooting 40%, you notice the 6 misses out
Yeah.
of every 10. When you for McGreen before the hiatus was shooting 38% from three. Like that's damn good.
Yeah.
And on a pretty high volume. But struggled really. I mean, the Clipper game, I think he was 2 for 6. In this game, he didn't score a single point, missed every single shot, and he had some really wide open looks. Pretty crazy tweet from @PickupHoop, who's a really good follow if you're a Laker fan. He probably the best Twitter account to keep all the old receipts, all the old takes on Lakers or on the Lakers, like going into the season and all that. Tweeted out Danny Green in 2 games versus the Raptors this season: 47 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 12 from the field, and 0 for 10 from three. Pretty crazy. Like, I mean, Honi, since you're the co-founder or the founder of Raptors Outsiders, is he like a double agent here, and is he helping out his old team?
I gotta admit that I use my oodles of wealth from running Raptors Outsiders to pay him to not score against us.
They see Steve Ballmer, but for the team in Canada.
I'm not paying
Yeah,
people
no, I mean,
off
it's
to ignore him going to Magic City.
yeah, no, it's I mean, it's frustrating, and I know it's frustrating for him. You could tell by his body language, like, and he has this tendency I've noticed too when he goes through these stretches where he struggles from the 3-point line, where he even tries to just get as many shots up as he can after whistles. Like, I think there was a play today, he had the ball in the corner, and well after the whistle, the referee's sitting there with his hands up, like ready for the ball, and Danny Green takes a shot because he just wants to see one go through the net. So like I know it's frustrating for him, and I know he's trying to shake out of it. And for a shooter, I mean, sometimes it's all it takes is one game or even one shot to see the ball go through the net. So I think he'll be fine. I mean, he's got 6 more of these games, these seeding games to go just before we even start the first round of the playoffs. And you know, Green is a 2-time NBA champion. He's played in a lot of big games, been in a lot of big moments. So I think ultimately he's going to be fine. So, but guys just got to make shots. Alex Caruso was a pretty solid 3-point shooter. I think he was 36% on the year going in, and it feels like I think he made one today. I can look at the box score, but he's missed a lot of open jumpers as well. So
KCP too.
Yeah, KCP been really good. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of guys that are more than capable from hitting threes and are missing a lot of open ones.
I think part of it is also that they're getting used to shooting in completely different environments. And I've heard a lot of other players around the league say these gyms are more advantageous for shooters. I guess like they just think there's better sight lines or whatever. Although I heard that mostly during the scrimmages before they put a million LCDs and whatnot around the court. So I don't know if that changes anything, but either way, I think it's just getting used to playing in that environment rather than playing at Staples or any other arena.
I wonder how weird it is to have the interactive fans behind the backboard because they're so much bigger than like actual people would be sitting in those seats.
I don't think if I was like pulling up for a jumper and all of a sudden I saw Chris Bosh on a screen behind the backcourt, I'd be a little out of sorts too.
I'm just saying, yeah, I'd be thrown off if I saw the Laker chain guy behind the basket instead of at midcourt where he's always sitting behind the broadcast booth. So
yeah, we need better research by these people. Why are you putting him in the wrong spot? You're throwing off our game.
Unbelievable. Just another piece of evidence that the underdog Lakers are trying to just overcome everything and shock the world and win this championship.
This one was a Raptors home game, man. I didn't see Drake anywhere.
Somewhere Drake was trying to get inside the Orlando bubble. Oh, yeah.
He was trying to see if he could be a virtual fan inside the Lakers locker room.
Oh yeah, no. It was such a weird game. Like honestly, like the last 2 games, and we'll jump into the Clipper game, recap that here in just a second. But these 2 games, man, after watching like a lot of the Raptors, or not the Raptors, the Rockets and the Mavs just played no defense at all. Like seeing high level defense in these 2 games that the Lakers have played it's kind of cool because like they've had like a playoff like intensity where these teams are just defending their asses off. and like they're scrambling, they're fighting for rebounds and all this stuff, and like that it's playoff like basketball, and I think ultimately that's going to make the Lakers better when these playoff games roll around. And it sucks if they haven't wrapped up number one seed just yet. Like we said, the Raptors are good, man. It's time people recognize how good that team is, even without Kawhi Leonard. They have a couple guys on that team that didn't play. I think OG Anunoby was hurt last year and is playing this year, and he's a solid contributor for him. Right. So they're good.
I believe through the same number of games as last season, they have one more win than they did last year with Kawhi. So they're just really solid all around for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they're tough, man. Lakers got a pretty tough draw getting the Clippers and then Toronto in their first two games. But I mean,
it's a good thing, honestly.
Ultimately, yeah. I mean, you're gonna get better from this. So, yeah. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about we're gonna kind of circle back around. Let's talk about the Clippers game. We have a little more fun. We've seen the Lakers play another game, and the Clippers played another game as well today. So we'll kind of circle back to that in just a second.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. The team of professionals at the Tax Defense Group are passionate about helping taxpayers resolve their tax debt. Their services include basic tax preparation, tax audits, resolving large tax debt, and more. They actively represent taxpayers throughout the entire USA. If you need help resolving your tax issues, contact the Tax Defense Group. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. That number again is 800-850-7973, and you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Are you thinking about starting a business or a side hustle? For all businesses to be successful, you need a website. Writer Junkie offers website development, content writing, and SEO services for business websites. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. We recently launched our website, ucaststudios.com. With articles about sports, special interest topics, and more, we have some cool stuff on our site. To read our content, please visit ucaststudios.com.
Okay, so we talked about the bad. Now we get to talk more again about the good. And like I said, we did a full pod on this that went a little more in depth. So if you want to hear that, you can head over to find us on Lakers Outsiders, just on wherever you get your podcasts. And we have a full episode up on those platforms. So be sure to check that out. But basically, Lakers it was a really weird game. The Lakers jumped out to a double-digit lead, and then the Clippers came all the way back and pushed their lead to 11, and then the Lakers came back and pushed their lead to 11, and then it results in LeBron getting a putback layup with, I think, 12 seconds left. That was ultimately the game winner because Paul George missed a three at the buzzer, which reminded me that he had a Gatorade commercial where he was hitting a game winner, and
pizza night.
And yeah, it was ball game for sure, just not in how he envisioned it. So Lakers come away with a close win. After what we've seen today, the day that we're recording this, the Clippers went and just absolutely destroyed the New Orleans Pelicans. I think they were by 20. They ended up winning by 23 and really just jumped all over them from the start. Given that and the Lakers' performance today, does that change kind of your perception of that Laker win, or still feel kind of about the same about it?
It's more or less the same thing to me. From the get-go, I was not going to take a lot out of that game just because of who was missing and how long it had been since anybody played basketball. But I think there was just small details in the game that were significant. And, we talked about Kyle Kuzma a lot, and I think that was really significant. And I think he had another pretty good game tonight, although in the fourth quarter he had quite a bit of difficulties trying to guard Kyle Lowry, which, to be fair, literally everybody on the Lakers did. So,
yeah, it's like the whole team did.
So, but yeah, seeing Kuzma kind of have more of a role as a 3-and-D player rather than a third option, I think was a significant takeaway. Seeing a guy like Dion Waiters be a ball handler and really create plays, I think is significant, just because you're seeing these little aspects of the Lakers that you can potentially see being repeated in the playoffs. Like, the result ultimately doesn't matter. It's nice to beat the Clippers and it's fun and we get to clown them, but I don't really take away anything from them winning, regardless of what the Clippers do following that.
My takeaway was, since the Lakers beat the Clippers in that game, they're guaranteed to get to the NBA Finals.
Yes. I mean, that's fair. We literally closed the podcast last time, but saying that today's game was going to be a finals preview. So it's looking pretty good so far.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a reasonable amount to take away from the first seeding game after 4.5 months off in a strange environment. Yeah.
I think you can lock it in right now.
No, I agree. Like, it was more so like looking at trends, and I really wanted to keep an eye on Kuzma and Dion Waiters to see, because I thought Dion, and that's kind of what one of the videos that we got coming out tomorrow, or Sunday, I should say, is focused on is Kuzma and Dion Waiters and their contributions, and Kuzma's defense I was pretty impressed with. Like, I kind of thought back to the first time they played Toronto, and Siakam just tore him up.
Yeah.
Like, scored at will on him, and today's effort was so much better. I mean, Siakam's really good, so like he's just a tough cover. I mean, he's a big, really, really big wing that can shoot, can handle. I mean, he can do a lot of different things. So he's a type of guy that you're probably not going to shut down, but you can try and limit him the best you can. I thought Kuzma did a really good job. As for guarding Lowry, I mean, I don't expect Kuzma to stick with point guards in general, but Lowry was just everything, and it was just really hard for the Lakers to contain. And it is what it is. But he played some really good defense. I mean, even that Norman Powell running hook shot, Kuz's reaction was priceless, because it was like the same thing I did. I was just like, he couldn't have defended that any better. Like, sometimes good offense just beats good defense. So Kuzma's defense has been encouraging. Dion Waiters has been very, very encouraging, just coming off the bench and providing an offensive spark, both in creating plays for himself and plays for others. It's really, really nice to see. So no, I mean, watching bits and pieces of the Clipper game just made me think that, I don't know, maybe it's a hot take, but that the Clippers and Lakers are just so far ahead of everybody else in the West. And that's not to say that nobody else is a threat, but when those two teams, if every team plays their best, the Clippers and Lakers are far and away better than everybody else in the Western Conference. And like, when the Lakers and Clippers play each other, it's going to look ugly just because they're two heavyweights just trading shots. Like, they're both really good defensive teams, and I think they're kind of built for one another. Like, the Lakers have AD, whereas the Clippers have a ton of wing players kind of designed to try and slow down LeBron, but they don't have anybody for AD, and so on and so forth. Like, there's just kind of, it's fun to see kind of how these things how they counteract one another, and that's why, to me, their games look kind of ugly, just because they're both really good and they're really tough defensive teams. So that's just kind of what I thought today. And I guess thinking back on it now, I mean, looking at the two games for the Lakers so far, I'm just encouraged that they've, beat the Clippers despite LeBron having a really tough offensive game. And I mean, AD scored 34 points in that game, but he wasn't very efficient from the field. He was 8 of 19. Like, that's not great. And then this game, they didn't get much AD offensively. They just kept doubling him. LeBron played decent, but certainly has played much better. As much or capable of much more. So the fact that these two games, they had a chance to win this game, tie game, 7 minutes to go, and they beat the Clippers despite their two superstars not playing to their full potential, is really encouraging. Like, they're getting contributions from these other guys, and they're right there with other elite teams. Like, the Clippers and the Raptors are two of the 4 best teams in the league right now. So, yeah, I mean, I'm encouraged ultimately. Like, the Lakers are going to have to shake off some rust. Basically, if they just start knocking down some of these open shots, I mean, notably the open threes, this team is going to be very, very difficult to beat in a single game, let alone 4 out of 7 times. So, not overly worried about it. They get, I mean, the Jazz up next. They're kind of frauds. I mean, a decent team, but whatever. The Jazz right now, I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're the 4 seed. I'm just not worried about Utah. I mean, this could come back to bite me. Like if Utah beats the Lakers in the second round, I don't know with them, man. I feel like that they're almost underachieving a little bit right now. They got stomped today by the Thunder, and I don't know. I think the Lakers definitely have some opportunities in that game to really get their offense going and shake off the rust even a little bit more.
Yeah, I think they're going to have some good opportunities going against Croissant Kwame Brown.
So, so tune in that night. We should have a pod up that night as well, talking about however that game comes out. And if the Lakers lose that game, I'll have to eat some serious crow after my statements today. And
eat some serious crepes.
I'll eat some serious Popeyes chicken sandwiches.
Yes.
Lose that game. I might have 3.
I was trying to fit one in, but you got it.
Like I will always fit in the Popeyes chicken sandwiches, and it's not a paid sponsorship somehow. I mean, yet, but look, whatever.
We have close to 15,000 followers on Twitter now. Why aren't they all tweeting at Popeyes to tell them to give us a sponsorship?
Yeah,
it's beneficial for you guys. You could get promo codes.
Seriously, I mean, I just want like a discount of some sort, or like a buy one get one chicken sandwich deal free.
Enter promo code Byron Scott for a free chicken sandwich.
Yeah, we did have a couple questions that we can probably run through just real quick here. Basically, they kind of related to Danny Green. Danny Green with the donut. When was the last time that happened? I'm just going to assume it was the last time they played the Raptors, since he has not scored against them this year.
He's had another donut game in between, but I'd prefer it to be that way. It's really funny.
We'll just say he only does it against non-American teams. So just the Canadian team. Why does Danny Green go ice cold against his former team? Honi, we established that you pay him lots of money to do that.
Allegedly.
I will save the other question. We can do a mailbag podcast this week. I think it's actually a very interesting question, basically asking about the rotation and LeBron kind of subbing out around the 5-6 minute mark like he normally does, and then kind of comes back in. I think that's a very interesting topic. So we'll save that for a full length discussion and some other questions and stuff. So but basically everybody's just mad at Danny Green tonight. But Danny, I still love you. So
I still love Danny Green, former Reno Bighorns legend. Come on, are you kidding me? You think I'm not going to support that guy?
Oh, the Reno Bighorns. Good God. Yeah, we're getting out of here. That's it. We got our Popeyes chicken sandwich mentioned in there. We should have just signed off right there. But no, we're going to get out of here. We got a couple of videos coming out here. As always, we got a whole crew staying on top of everything, news, headlines, everything regarding the Lakers. So be sure to tune into LakersOutsiders.com. And you can follow all of our socials, Twitter and Instagram, just at Lakers Outsiders. And you can like us on Facebook as well. And, of course, you can subscribe to UCast Studios and Lakers Outsiders on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow Honi on Twitter, just at HONIAHM, and me at Gary Kester. I don't know why I was starting to blank on that for a minute, but you can also follow Honi's alternate account, just at Raptors Outsiders. So be sure to check that out if you're a Raptors fan.
Somebody's going to make that if it doesn't exist already.
So, yeah, that's going to do it for us this time. Hopefully on Tuesday we'll be talking about a win. If not, we'll be there regardless. So be sure to tune in. Thank you much for listening. And until next time, this is Gary Kester with Honi Ahmadian and the Lakers Outsiders signing off.
Shout out to Lakers and Reno Bighorns legend, Jeremy Lin.